Hey, it's Austin James. If you're like me, trying to live your best life while living with diabetes, you can relate to worrying if you're doing a good job managing your diabetes. I use the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor to get real-time glucose readings and see the impact of every meal and activity to make better decisions. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor can help me live life with diabetes on my own terms, and it gives me more time for the things I love, like being a dad and a musician. Now this is progress. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
Chronic migraine is 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for adults with migraine with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It prevents, on average, 8 to 9 headache days a month versus 6 to 7 for placebo.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Ask your doctor and visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
Welcome back to Age Better. I'm your host, Barbara Hannah Grufferman. I'm thrilled to bring you this replay of one of our most popular, most downloaded, and most transformative episodes in 2024, featuring Dr. Vonda Wright, a true trailblazer in longevity medicine and a double board-certified orthopedic sports surgeon. Dr. Wright's message is one I wholeheartedly embrace. You have far more control over how you age than you might think. As we approach the new year, this episode is the perfect way to reset and refocus on what really matters, your health, vitality, and well-being. So whether you're 35 or 75, Dr. Wright shares practical, science-backed strategies to help you move into the year ahead with strength and confidence. From strength training that really works to the power of timed eating, she proves that aging better isn't just a possibility. It's within your reach, and it's a heck of a lot simpler than you might expect. As Dr. Wright says, the future is yours to shape, and this episode serves as your roadmap. You'll find all the links to Dr. Wright's website, her must-read books, and how to follow her on social media in the show notes. And by the way, she has over 1 million followers on Instagram, including me, and you will be too. So get ready to kickstart the new year with 5 game-changing tips that will revolutionize how you think about aging, how you move your body, and how you fuel your future. And get ready to age better. Dr. Wright, welcome to Age Better. I'm so happy you're here with me today.
Well, I'm so glad we could make this work.
Yeah, so you're going to cover really like a master class in midlife for all of us. You're going to cover probably your 5 best tips for aging better and to put everybody on the age better path. But before we get to those, I have a couple of questions. One, recently, just a few days ago, I saw on social media that you used a term. I had never heard this term used before, and I think you may have coined it. But I totally get it. It's sarcopenia. So can you just please explain for those listening or watching on YouTube who don't yet follow you on social media, but I know that after this episode, they absolutely will. What is sarcopenia, please?
Well, I don't want to take credit where it's not due. I didn't coin the word sarcopenia, but I think that it's been buried in the academic literature and has rarely seen the light of day when it comes to popular cultures. So I was glad to introduce it. Sarcopenia is the thought that our musculoskeletal system works all together. So sarcopenia is the age-related loss of muscle that we all experience. And if we don't do anything about it in terms of lifting weights or eating a lot of protein, it can go rampant, such that we can lose 20 to 30% of our lean muscle mass by the time we're in our 70s and 80s, which has a huge impact on our frailty. So that's sarcopenia. Obesity is what everybody knows it's to be. It's too much of a good thing. There's nothing wrong with fat in moderation, right? So sarcobesity is the status we find ourselves when we have too little muscle and therefore metabolic unhealth and too much fat. Fat is not just hanging around, Barbara. Fat is a noxious metabolic organ that produces adipokines that affect our bone health, that affect our muscle health. And so it can lead to disease. So sarcobesity, and that post that I posted that showed the leg of one of my patients that had too little muscle and too much fat.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah. It's very visual and it helps people understand, I'm not just big boned. I have too little muscle and too much fat.
Right. And we're going to get into some of your tips, which will help the audience listening in to kind of increase their muscle mass and also hopefully decrease that extra fat, especially that fat that wraps itself around your organs that can lead to, as you pointed out, so many other issues. So before we get to your tips, I have one more question. Also, a few days ago, a new study came out, and I think you and I both kind of rolled our eyes at this one a little bit because it was once again talking about how, and I quote, almost half of all cancers can be avoided, prevented by simple lifestyle changes. I think we've known this already, why we even needed a new study. But okay, a new study came out and the media has been picking up about it. So what's your comment on that?
Well, thank you for asking me this. My first job, people may not know this far back history of me. My first job, medical job, was as a cancer nurse. I have a master's degree in oncology nursing. So it's really important to me that we just don't think of as cancer as something that we have no control over. The fact of the matter is, what is cancer? Cancer is a stem cell gone bad. Our body is very, very, very tightly controlled until something happens, some environmental change, some misstep in our genetics causes a stem cell or a tissue to replicate uncontrollably. So the fact that this article came out and said that cancer can be prevented by the lifestyle we lead is something we've known for a long time. We know that every choice we make affects us at a genetic level. I mean, we used to think that we were given a set of genes and there was nothing we could do about it. Well, we know that through the study of something called epigenetics, that 80 or 90% of the way we age, the cancers we develop, are influenced by the lifestyle choices we make every day. And so that can seem ominous, but what it actually is incredibly hopeful. That you and I have the ability to predetermine how we will age by whether or not we eat broccoli, whether or not we get up from the table and take a walk, whether all the choices we make put us and our ability to make decisions in the driver's seat. And so if we want to minimize our chance of cancers which scare us, then we have the ability to make the choices that minimize their effect on our lives. I think it's a very
right. I couldn't agree more. I mean, every study I've seen for years and years and years really supports everything you just said. So everyone listening in, it really doesn't take a lot. I mean, I think that a lot of what Dr. Wright has talked about and has studied and is doing herself and will be discussing now with us might be pushing yourself a little bit more, but it really doesn't take a lot to embrace these lifestyle changes to help you avoid the most common forms of cancer. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. So, okay. And also, everyone, thank you for sending in your questions. I got some really great ones, which we will also be getting to. So, Dr. Wright, I really am viewing this as like a master class in midlife and aging better from you. So let's start. If you want to go with 5 tips, what are your best 5 tips that people can start to do right now to age better?
Well, I think the first one is going to surprise people because we'll get to the ones that you expect me to say. The number one thing I want to share with people is that there is never an age or skill level when your body will not respond to the demands you put on it. So what I mean by this is my number one tip for aging well is your mindset. We need to stop looking over our shoulder. This is the way I always illustrate it. Stop looking over our shoulder at what it was like to be 20 and 30. Listen, we have a limited memory of what it was like to be at that age. Okay, maybe it was physically easier, but most of us didn't know ourselves then. We probably didn't have the great kind of jobs we had then. We don't have the stability. And so it's easy to think that we need to worship the youth that we experience. But the fact of the matter is, if we want to face our future, we need to pivot and look forward and not dread what's coming, but take the steps we're going to say next to live our best lives going forward. And so the first mastering midlife, mastering aging step is to pivot our mindset that the best is yet to come and to stop worshiping our youth. When we didn't know ourselves, we were not financially stable and didn't even realize how good it was going to get. So that's number one.
And I want a standing ovation on that one, Dr. Wright. Okay, next.
Young people, I have young children. I have millennial children. They don't know how good it's going to get. They do not understand it yet, but it's going to get really good. So number two, what comes next? Well, gosh, I don't want to assign value to all of these, but things that I wish I had recognized in my 20s and 30s that I know now is I used to say stupid things like, I will sleep when I'm dead. Well, now I know that if I don't take time to recover and sleep, I will be dead. So another thing, not the number two thing, but another thing to think about as we are mastering midlife is rest and recovery is pivotal. And that does not mean rest and recovery stimulated by alcohol or sleeping pills, or because you may pass out from those, but it is not rejuvenatory. I just made that word up.
I like that word. It's a good one.
So we need real sleep. And it's hard in midlife. And there's a lot of things we can do to help that. So mindset, rest and rejuvenation. The four things that I put together in an acronym to help people simply remember is to face their future from a physical standpoint is we need to have flexibility and mobility in our lives. So why do people as they age start shuffling along? Well, part of that is muscle strength, but a lot of it is loss of joint mobility. So we need to focus on joint mobility through flexibility. And we can, depending on how many hours you want to be here, we can talk about the specifics of that. So that's F, flexibility. A is aerobic exercise. Now we got to keep our hearts healthy. We have just come out of, and I am one of the people, come out of a phase where all of us were doing high intensity interval training every day of the week. My office is in this amazing performance complex, and I still see people doing high intensity interval training 7 days a week. And what happens is they end up in my office injured. So what I recommend for aerobic training for people right now is spending 3 hours a week in what we call base training, which is a lower heart rate or even rapid walking. I mean, people think it's not enough work. It certainly is. 3 hours a week doing base training, heart rate, and then twice a week so that we stimulate our mitochondria. Twice a week so that we stimulate our stem cells. We do sprint. Now, people withdraw from me when I say the word sprinting. Sprinting is a heart rate monitored activity. It doesn't mean that I have to look like Usain Bolt or Richardson in the sprinter in this Olympics. It just means that I have to go as fast as I can go on these little legs of mine, because that will get my heart rate up and that will work on all of my metabolic mobility. So, number one, flexibility. Number two, aerobic training. Number three, or FAC, is carry a load. I specifically do not call it weight training, although that's what I'm recommending people do now. carry a load means we must challenge our muscles to continue to grow. If you have not stepped away from a couch ever in your life, or if you are still reflecting on all the great things you did in high school but haven't done anything since, or if you're an adult onset exerciser, you're just starting now, it is never too late, but critical to your journey is building lean muscle mass. So you can start with body weight things, you can start with yoga and Pilates, but to really build muscle across the lifespan, we have got to pick up some heavy weights and do lower reps, higher weights, because that's what's going to build muscle. And finally, E in this FACE acronym I like to use, FACE, is equilibrium, balance, and foot speed. You can build all the aerobic capacity you want. You can build all the muscle you want. You can be as flexible as you want. But if we can't balance, if we cannot continue to stand upright, or we don't have the foot speed, the agility to step over the curb instead of tripping over the curb, we will still fall, which can be devastating. So for the people I train or prescribe mobility to, we always work in agility and foot speed.
That makes total sense. I have a question for you. I have 2 follow-up questions from the FACE group of activities that you're recommending. Let's first go back to the HIIT, or the speed, or the sprinting, as you called it. Do you have a specific recommendation? For example, I'm training right now for my 18th marathon, and I only started running at 50. So I'm still kind of, I feel like I'm 67. So I've been doing it for the fair amount of time now. But speed training is an essential part of my training program. But I also totally believe it should be a part of everyone's program, whether you run marathons or not. And so I've seen recommendations for things like a 4x4, where you sprint for 4 minutes, rest for 4, or 30-second sprints. Is there something in your mind that you think a midlife woman should really be, a medium ability and agility and all that, a normal woman, in other words, should aim for?
So those 2 examples you gave serve different goals. So when I say 3 hours of base training, that is lower heart rate because we're trying to burn fat when we exercise. So for many people, it's brisk walk or slow jog. On top of that, we do sprint interval training, which is the example of that is as fast as you can go, but only for 30 seconds. 30 seconds, completely recover, and do that 4 times. So for me, this is my example. When I am doing base training on a treadmill, you can do it on any apparatus. You can do it outside. It's all heart rate based. For me, to get my heart rate to 130, which is my lactate threshold, I have my incline at 4 to 5 and my speed is about 4. When I am done with 45 minutes of that, then I punch up the treadmill to 11 because that's as fast as I can go. I have short legs and I do that as fast as I can go for 30 seconds. Now my heart rate gets up to about 186 for 30 seconds, but then I punch it down. I completely recover and it takes me 2 to 3 minutes to recover. And I do that 4 times. The purpose of that is to stimulate my stem cells, give me my mitochondria metabolic flexibility. But I also, now this may seem overwhelming to people, you layer on these things. You don't do all of this at once. After you get your base training down, then you can add your sprint intervals. But if we want to build our VO2 max, which is our true optimal cardiac capacity, it's also VO2 max will also predetermine if we become frail. To train VO2 max is the second example you gave. It's as hard as you can go for 4 minutes with 4 minutes of recovery and do that for 3 or 4 times. So it's slower than your sprint intervals because you must maintain it for 4 minutes.
Right.
Longer than your sprint intervals. And it has 2 different goals. That will work on your VO2 max versus your metabolic flexibility, which is what the sprint intervals will do.
Thank you for that. I mean, I'm going to be using exactly what you just said for my own purposes and training. But I think that everybody listening in, those 30-second sprints really are quite doable. And you can do it on a treadmill, as you were just saying you do, or outside, as I prefer to do, running outside, or even on a bike, right? I mean, on a stationary bike or
on a
rower,
skier thing, on a climber, on an elliptical. It doesn't really matter. If I'm running outside and I happen to be on a track, then I'll walk around the track at my baseline speed, and then I'll sprint 110 yards. And that's, I don't know, maybe I can't get through 220 in 30 seconds anymore, but you get the idea.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think it's really great. Now, my second question is jumping over to carry heavy.
Carrying a load. Yeah. Carrying a load.
I had the pleasure of interviewing you for my column in the Aerobic, the magazine recently. That'll be coming out next month. It's called Fix Your Body. And specifically, I wanted to talk to you about building backbone density.
Yeah.
And can you do this? And how can you do this? And then one of the many great tips, one of them was jumping on a trampoline, like a mini trampoline at home, which you can do, and also wearing a weighted vest, which is really such a great idea. I haven't yet incorporated that, but I'm planning on it. But the other one, which is really critical, and I'm so intrigued by, and especially after I saw your TED Talk-ish talk that you gave for Growing Bolder recently, showing all the benefits of carrying heavy and weight loading. But specifically, you told me for this column about another 4x4. Do you want to just tell us about that?
About weightlifting, lifting weights?
Yes, specifically about weightlifting, and like kind of get rid of like lifting the 20 pounds. Forget about that. What should we do instead?
So, women for decades have been told that if they lift heavy, they're going to grow to be like a bodybuilder and be bulky. And well, number one, what's wrong with that? But number two, women have traditionally picked up mamby-pamby pink weights, which don't waste your time, people. If you are going to invest your time in lifting weights, let's grow some muscle, because muscle is metabolically active. It will keep you from falling down. It will help build better bone. So let's do it right. The way to do it is to lift fewer reps, heavier weight. There's a range, actually, 3 to 6 reps. But to make it easy for my people, I say 4 reps, 4 sets of the basic 4 lifts, right? So how do I want you to lift weights? I want you to do compound total body lifts for the upper and lower body. So what that means is, for your upper body, there's a push like a bench press type activity, and there's a pull like a pull up. And there's a variety of things you can do, but those are the basic concepts. Something that's pushing, something that's pulling. For the lower extremities, it's the same thing. Push pull, which is squat and deadlift. So you want to do 4 reps, 4 sets, which means that the weight is heavier than you would be able to do if you were doing 20 reps. So that is what's going to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, is to lift.
And what you had said to me when I interviewed you for that column was that you really can't, you can't do more than 4. Like you just can't, your body won't let you. Like that's it. Like you've hit the maximum number. And that's how you sort of know, right?
You may be able to do 1 more, but you're hitting fatigue. You're hitting failure. You're approaching failure.
So now let's get to supplementation, nutrition. What are your tips for that for women in midlife?
I think midlife women in particular were raised in a generation where skinny was the rule. And so we have to change our mindset and feed ourselves, right? If we intend to live long and prosper and not to become frail little old lady who end up in our hospital with a broken hip, we have to feed ourselves enough. And so I like people to do that by first concentrating on the volume of protein they eat. Protein will build muscle. It will build bones. It's critical for all areas of our health. And I recommend, as many people recommend, 1 gram of protein per ideal body pound. So it seems like a lot of protein because most women get 60, maybe 90 grams a day, which is simply not enough. And so We have to focus on, I'll say it again, 1 gram per ideal pound, not what you weigh, but what ideally is appropriate for your height. Because many of us carry extra weight and we don't want to calculate based on what we wish we could not have anyway.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so if you're going to eat protein, what does that mean? Well, let's just go through some things. We want high quality protein. The best quality protein is highest in an amino acid called leucine. Leucine is one of the essential amino acids. And let's define that. Protein is comprised of 20 building blocks pieced together called amino acids. There are 20. 11 of them your body can make. 9 of them are essential. You must get them from your food. Of the 9 essential amino acid building blocks, 3 are what we call branch chain amino acids, which just means their structure is in branching structures like a tree. Leucine is one of those. Your body cannot make it. You must get it from your food. It is the most powerful amino acid in stimulating muscle protein synthesis, which is the goal.
Yeah.
So where do we get the most leucine? Well, we get it from sources of protein. The highest is called whey. It's an animal protein from milk type products. You know, one of the highest sources of whey protein is actually mother's milk. Nature knows what it's doing. So when we're feeding our babies breast milk, we're giving them plenty of leucine so that they can start building their muscle. Well, adults don't drink breast milk, so we can get it from cow's milk in whey. If you are opposed or cannot drink that, well, let's give your audience some numbers. Whey protein provides 10 to 12% leucine. So that's really good. Meat, any kind of meat, gives you about 8 to 10% of that as leucine. Mm-hmm. If you don't want meat, then you can get it from beans or tofu, which is about 6 to 8%. So those are all examples of protein. I've given you those examples of the highest content of leucine because you want it to matter. If you're going to go to the trouble to eat protein, eat the best protein for your body. So people are still a little overwhelmed when I tell them to eat 1 gram per ideal body pound. So I give them examples on how I do it. So this is how I do it.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I want 130 grams of protein a day. That's my goal. I'm a short person, but I'm a really muscly person. And so I weigh more than you would think I would weigh. So I want 130 grams. So I eat the same things every day. Food is fuel to me. It's not always festivity, and it's just fuel. So a cup of egg whites in an omelet every morning is 20 grams of protein. And then about mid-morning, 10:30, I'll have a scoop of protein powder in a bottle of water. It's not meant to be luxurious. It's meant to get the protein in. So that's another 30 grams. At lunch, I'll always eat usually a chicken breast about the size of my hand with whatever else I'm eating. So that's another about 40 grams of protein. So already I'm up to about 100. In the afternoon, I'll have another protein little tidbit snack, maybe some beef jerky, maybe some peanut butter, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And then at dinner, I have another 30 grams and zoop, it's done.
That's really great. I had a couple of experts on over the last 2 years talking about protein timing and how the typical American diet dictates that you eat your protein late in the day at dinner. Like you'll eat, a donut or a bagel for breakfast and then something else for lunch. And then dinner is your meat and potatoes, et cetera, or chicken. And that really has to be not even reversed, just that more has to be added on early in the day. And so I have become a complete convert to that way of thinking easily for the last year and a half since I first really understood this. And you know what? I really do feel a difference for sure. And I too use whey isolate protein powder. Yeah. And I mix it with some water, yeah. Sure. But then I put in a bunch of frozen blueberries just to get some berries in there as well. Oh. So easy peasy, right?
Yeah, it's easy.
And a little scoop of peanut butter. It's so easy. And it's actually quite good. I mean, it's a little more festive than your version. Right? My adding the blueberries, yours just the water, but either way works, gets the job done.
That's right.
So, Dr. Wright, I really want your opinion on a very popular way of eating, and that is intermittent fasting. And I think I already know your answer because you're basically losing an opportunity to get protein in early in the day if you do a typical intermittent fasting where you don't start eating until later in the day so your body has properly fasted. So what is your opinion of that?
So I think you have to ask yourself what your goals are. Why are you intermittent fasting? I think a lot of women have glommed onto this for weight loss, actually. And okay, that'll work because of calorie restriction, right? So I like the concept of not so much for me, for the people I guide, not so much as intermittent fasting, but timed eating, meaning that if I know I want to go to bed at 9:30, I will not eat after 3 hours prior, so 6:30, so that I can be completely digested. And so my gut can truly have a rest for 14 hours overnight, because that's one of the points is our body needs a time to rest. Our gut needs a time to rest.
Yes.
In addition to calorie restriction. So I choose to do that by not eating after about 6:30. But intermittent fasting for training people like you're a marathoner, me, I just tend to work out a lot. It can be difficult, actually, to get enough nutrition in to fuel the work we're going to do and not start eating until 11 o'clock in the morning, right?
Absolutely right.
So it's hard. And especially if you want to have protein at every meal and get enough protein in. If you're only eating for 8 hours a day from 11 to 6, it's a lot to cram in that period. So I am supportive of timed eating, stopping eating early enough that your gut gets a rest. You can go into autophagy, which is also the point of this. But it doesn't work for training people to cram your calories into that narrow window of time. And so I realize that is a little oppositional to some of the very popular thinking right now out in pop culture. But, everybody has to figure out what works for them. And for intermittent fasting works for some people. I think the idea is that we don't have unlimited feeding. We don't feed ourselves for 16 hours a day and then sleep for 8 hours a day. We get our nutrition in. Nutrition is for fuel. It's not always for pleasure. We just have to pivot our mindset around why we're eating. We're eating for fuel. And then go out on a great Saturday night and eat for pleasure. The rest of the time, it's for fueling the activity that you're going to do.
Right.
Which may not be that popular, Barbara.
I think it is, though, becoming more popular with people over 50, because all the studies I've seen show that people over 50 and 60, you really need protein, or else you're starting it early, or else you're starting your day at a protein deficit, which is never a good thing to do. So I'm a former intermittent fasting person, and now I do it occasionally, but for the most part, I can't imagine going out for like a 10-mile training run without having eaten my whole wheat bagel with peanut butter and banana. I just can't imagine it.
You can't. If you're going to be a distance runner, no. If you're training for distance, you just can't. In fact, I don't marathon anymore. I used to marathon. And the thing I loved most about it was finishing. It wasn't the running. It was getting to eat whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. Literally, when you're putting in that many miles, you really have the luxury of eating all the time. But
it's true. Yeah. This is true. No matter what age you are, this is true. So, Dr. Wright, before we get to our listener questions, are there other things you want to tell us to do so that we can all age better?
Yeah. So we talked about mindset. We talked about facing your future as the physical part. We talked about nutrition. Here's the last thing I'll leave people with, and it's more another mindset thing, is here's the deal. There is never an age or a skill level when your body will not respond to you. So never think that you are simply too old to start, whether you're 40, 50, 60 or beyond. Listen, I've done a lot of aging research in my academic career at the University of Pittsburgh, and I studied people from 50 to 103. And I'm going to tell you, we saw remarkable things out of people, even in the golden decades, 70, 80, 90. But what we know from the original musculoskeletal aging research is that the original studies on the impact of mobility on your aging were done in 90-year-old men in nursing homes who, over a 6-week course of investing in their mobility, increased their function 150%. So I do not want anybody to think that just because they've been sitting around for 30 years, that their body will not respond. Our bodies are amazing. There is never an age or skill level when it will not improve if you ask it to.
Yeah, no, it's really just incredible what the body can do. We just don't understand, I think, what our bodies are capable of doing if we push them just a little bit more. So thank you for that motivation to do that. So should we get on to our listener questions?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So I got quite a few. So I had to cull a few of them that I felt would be kind of the most relevant to the broadest audience. So here we go. Claudie asked, what is the absolute best strategy for musculoskeletal syndrome if you can't take hormone therapy, particularly for women in their 60s?
So what she's describing is a nomenclature that I created called the musculoskeletal syndrome of menopause, meaning that estrogen receptors, and therefore the effect of estrogen, is ubiquitous on all musculoskeletal tissues, which are bone, tendon, ligament, muscle, fat. And so what she's asking is, I usually talk a lot about the role of hormone replacement therapy in aiding the musculoskeletal system. But what if you can't or do not want to replace your hormones? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that means that all the other 5 things I just spoke to Barbara about for midlife mastery apply to you. That people tend to think if I suggest to them hormone replacement, that's the golden ticket. It's the magic bullet. It's not. You can completely replace your hormones and do none of the rest and still make no progress. They work hand in hand. So if you choose to or cannot, then you still got 5 other choices.
Thank you for that. And what you just said, I think also applies to people who might be taking some of the weight loss drugs like Ozempic, Monjavi, and so on. They think, that's the golden ticket.
Oh, it's not.
It's so not. But it's the same mindset. And so everyone listening in, no, please go back to the beginning of this conversation. And okay. Molly asks, should women over 60 be taking hormone therapy for bone and heart and brain health if they're already kind of doing everything right, lifting heavy and eating all the right things? What do you think, Dr. Wright?
My position on hormone replacement therapy is that every woman is a sentient being with the ability to make the choice for herself. Now, that choice must be based on science and not fear. You cannot base that decision based on what your neighbor is telling you, what you've read in the newsstands. You cannot base it even sometimes on what your untrained physician is telling you, because the fact of the matter is only 25% of all physicians are trained in hormone care for women or have taken the time, like I have, to become a self-learned expert in the field. So every woman gets to make their own decision based on science. The 2 ways I ask you to make that decision, if you have any skepticism, you need all the data. You need to read Estrogen Matters by Avram Blooming and Carol Tavris. It's a book that changed my life. If you need the data, it's all there. For many, 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 many women, the benefits outweigh the risks of hormone replacement therapy, but you need to feel comfortable with that by reading that book. The other place for good information is menopause.org. It's the North American Menopause Society website, which has a list of standards. That being said, it is a complete package for optimum aging, for optimum support of your body. It's not one thing or another. I'm sorry, people, there is no magic bullet. It takes complete lifestyle investment to live long and prosper. So just because you're doing all the things means that you don't have to make the decision. You can make the decision not to do hormones, but you must make the decision, right? So that's the way I'm going to answer Molly.
Yes. Yeah. I couldn't agree more with that. And I very often have Dr. Margaret Noctegal on, who's a reproductive endocrinologist at NYU. We talk about menopause and menopause-related issues and concerns that women have. And we are a proponent of hormone therapy if it's right for you. And it isn't right for everyone. But I strongly urge everyone to be open-minded to investigating hormone therapy. Okay, so Anne-Marie writes, now we're moving to the knee area. I would like to know if having knee osteoarthritis, which is what I have in both knees, eventually leads to knee replacement surgery.
Well, okay. So what is osteoarthritis? It is the wear and tear arthritis of our cartilage, which is the smoother than ice cap on every bone. This is a bone. This is the cap. Cartilage is the cap of the bones. Cartilage is smoother than glass, smoother than ice. It has a very low friction. So normally you don't feel your joints until you start to wear them away due to repetition of load, but not just repetition of load. There is no evidence that something like running causes arthritis.
Right.
There is no evidence. So anybody who says that has not read the evidence. But what does cause arthritis is carrying around too much weight. Cartilage is very sensitive to excess weight. Joints bear 5 to 7 times body weight. So if you're heavy, you're going to wear your cartilage down. High inflammation for any cause. Trauma can cause arthritis. Or, frankly, we know that men before 50 have less arthritis than women, but women after 50, when their estrogen has walked out the door, have much higher levels of arthritis.
Yep.
So with that background, having arthritis does not mean you need a total joint. Lots of people have arthritis. You have arthritis, you're running marathons,
That's right?
right?
Yep.
When it gets to be so worn down that it's literally, instead of having a cushion like this, it's bone on bone, and you can't take the pain, or you've got to get your life back, that is a great time to entertain getting a total joint, which is one of the most successful procedures that orthopedic surgeons do. And lots of people are afraid to do that. But when you can't walk, what you're doing is sentencing yourself to a sedentary death. And so what people tell me after I replace their joint or they've had their joint replaced, they're like, I don't know why I waited so long. I was in pain for so long.
Yeah.
I didn't get to do anything I loved for so long because they were fearful of the procedure. So I just encourage them to talk to people who've had it.
Yeah.
To talk to their doctors, to think about what they're giving up now over the fear of a procedure that is more than 90% successful.
I have a follow-up question to that. So if you do have arthritis and it's not quite bone on bone, not quite that severe, how effective are the gel injections that help to lubricate?
So you're talking about hyaluronic acid gel injections. There are multiple brands, but they all contain a substance your body makes called hyaluronic acid. And we either get it from the combs of chickens, the red rooster combs, or we synthesize it from the chemical structure in a laboratory. Now, I'm going to give you the data, and I'm going to tell you in my practice. In my practice, gel injections are highly effective every 6 months for extending the use of your knee, putting off joint replacement. It decreases pain and inflammation. That being said, multiple studies have found that it has only about a 50 or 60% efficacy rate. So that's not that high. That's not my experience in my practice, but when you put all the studies together, something that I use a lot more often than gel now, because insurance is not paying for gel. And I tell my patients, if you're going to pay for something out of pocket, pay for what's more effective. And the research shows, and certainly my clinical experience shows, that using platelet-rich plasma, which means drawing blood from your own arm, which I draw about 60 cc's in a tube. It's about this big in a tube. Spinning it in our centrifuge, so we concentrate the platelets. Platelets are a part of your blood that not only plug up the hole when you, for instance, cut yourself, plugs up the hole. But when it sticks there, it then releases all the growth factors your body makes. So platelets are little sacs of growth factors. So we concentrate your blood into about 3 cc's of 5 billion platelets and inject that into your arthritic knees. And it's highly effective for up to 2 years. So I'm using a lot more platelet-rich plasma in my practice these days.
I think that's wonderful. And I actually had that done about 2 years ago on my left knee.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to stop running marathons or stop running.
Yeah.
In partnership with my doctor here in New York City, we decided to do 3 consecutive injections of hyaluronic acid.
Yes.
Of 3 weeks.
Yes.
And the third one was mixed with PRP.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, well, as I mentioned, I'm training for number 18. To me, it was like a miracle, a true miracle. So I highly encourage everyone to kind of check that out. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. Oh, so here's another knee question. Melissa wrote, if I have been told my knees are bone on bone because the meniscus has been removed arthroscopically, can I do any amount of knee strengthening type exercises to strengthen around the knees? Or am I only looking at surgery at this point? Another person who was like, no to surgery. No. If so, which exercises are best?
Yeah. So you know what? The knees don't have muscles. There are muscles all around the knees, but the knee itself is a joint. So surprisingly, the muscles that help support knees the best is your butt, core, and hips, your glute muscles, your core muscles, front and back, and all the big muscles surrounding your hips, because the knee sees the impact from above and below. So strengthening those muscles will cushion your impact of walking and every activity. So instead of doing this every time you take a step, your muscles act like disc brakes. So it's not quite so impactful.
So you're telling all of us to focus on core and butt.
Yes, that's right. Your glutes, your core, and your hamstrings and your quads.
Exactly what I have been doing. This is, it's like, yay, I'm so excited. I feel like you're supporting.
Yeah.
Yay. That's because I follow you on social media, Dr. Wright.
Of course it is, yeah. You're great.
Okay, so Phyllis has a 2-part question for you. Okay, A, what are your thoughts on an exercise fad? I haven't heard of this exact fad, but an exercise fad that has women over 60 doing extremely heavy hip thrusts, I guess like holding weights while you do the hip, like a bridge or so, I guess. And B, Phyllis shared that she is 73 years old, lifelong lifter, and now has L3 and L4 fusion. That doesn't sound too good. I guess degenerative disc disease sounds like. Plus 2 fake hips, as she called it. Yeah. Are there any exercises that she should absolutely, positively, 100% avoid?
Well, you know,
so let's go with the hip thrust first.
Yeah. It's always hard to give really specific instructions.
Absolutely,
body, but I have not seen the hip thrust fad. I mean, I'm on social media every day. I've not seen that, but there is never a bad thing about strengthening your core. There is never a reason not to strengthen your core. Or your butt. Hip thrusts are for your glutes and your core. There's never a reason not to do that. And to do it extremely heavily goes back to the thought that you have to work your muscles hard enough that they are stressed out, and so that they will produce more muscle. If you're doing hip thrusts with your body weight and it's easy for you and you can do 50 of them, your body doesn't see that as work. But if you've laid a plate on top or you're on a machine that makes it work for you, then you're going to get benefit from that.
All right. So it sounds like, yeah, do it if your body can do it. And as long as you don't get injured, why not? And then, and if a woman has 2 hip replacements, she calls it fake hips, and some clear issues with her spine area, her degenerative disc disease, is there anything that she really should be avoiding?
Well, I hope that when you got your total hips, I don't remember the lady's name, that your doctor gave you an explanation,
Phyllis,
of hip precautions, right? And it depends how old your doctor put your hips in. So that's why it's hard. If your hips go in through the front, you have different precautions than if you had a posterior approach. But in general, fake hips are not meant for hyperflexion, meaning bending your hips to 140 degrees, knees to chest, generally not amazing for total hips, or lifting really heavy and deep squats. But it's hard to know because I don't know how your hips were put in. But also, if you've already had a lumbar fusion, you probably need to protect your spine. And it also depends, honestly, Barbara, on what your bone status is. I think every woman should have a bone density test at 40, which is clearly against what insurance will pay for. But I think at 65 to find out that your bones are crumbling is too late. So I think everybody needs to know what their bone density is as a way to modify how they're lifting.
Yeah. Everyone who's been following me for any amount of time know how important bone health is to me. I'm on the board of the Bone Health and Osteoporosis Foundation, have been for 10 years, and bone health is critical to me. The way I found out I have low bone density at the age of 50, had just gone through menopause, and then just taking a walk with my dog, fell and broke my arm. Shouldn't have, and got my first bone density test. I mean, otherwise it would have been probably 65.
That's right.
And you're right. Then I would have found out that I had low bone density.
Yes.
Not a good idea.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree with you more. And everybody at BHOF agrees with you too, Dr. Wright, on that. So everyone, please do think about the health of your bones. You've heard me say this. Go get a bone density test. It's not that expensive.
It isn't.
And then
Just
start to do everything Dr. Wright's been telling you to do, and you will protect your bones for sure. Okay, we have one more question, and this just came in under the wire. I was just about to no more questions, and it came in. Sarah Lynn, she asks, okay, I've been on hormone therapy, and it's been wonderful for me. Yay. However, I think I might benefit from testosterone also. I don't know why she thinks that, but that's what she said. What does Dr. Wright think about this?
So I think that, number one, testosterone is not a male hormone. Estrogen is not a female hormone. Testosterone and estrogen are made by both men and women. They are hormones that your body uses. Both testosterone and estrogen in women start to decline in your 40s, long before you ever sprout your perimenopausal symptoms. Testosterone is critical for everything from bone health to brain health in women, just like it is in men. And so there are many reasons besides low libido that testosterone can be helpful for women. It's hard to get because currently the only FDA-approved reason for testosterone in women is low libido. So you can ask your OB-GYN about that, and it is FDA approved for that reason. I personally take testosterone because it has a role in muscle health, bone health, brain health, mood, and I think there are clear benefits. But that is another part of your hormone decision-making tree that you must investigate and get the data on to make.
And that's in partnership with a trusted healthcare provider, right? Yep. Well, okay. Dr. Wright, thank you for giving us all this time and incredible information and tips and motivation too, which I really always appreciate. I really want to circle back to the very first thing that you talked about, and that was just kind of don't look backward at when you were 20 and 30. Don't do that. Don't do that. Face forward. Look forward. Yeah. Think about how you are now. And what I always like to talk about too is, in fact, the episode last week was about assessing, reassessing, and tweaking. You have to do this throughout your life, in all aspects of your life, right? Not just your health and your body, but your relationships, your work, everything has to be assessed, reassessed, and tweaked according to what's going to really benefit you. So thank you so much for that. There'll be a lot more information about Dr. Wright, everybody, in the show notes, so please check it out. Please follow Dr. Wright on all social media. She's on everything, on every platform. And so you definitely want to go and do that, because Dr. Wright, you're always putting out great new information, fresh new perspectives.
Thank you.
And that is something that I always really appreciate. So anything you want to say? Any last kind of tip? Anything you maybe want to tell the audience to do right now when they stop listening to this episode?
Well, you know what I want? Yeah, there's so many, we told you all the nuggets, but here's the thing. I've been taking care of people for a very long time. And sometimes we think, oh, I don't have the motivation, or I start something and I don't finish, or I know what to do and I don't do it. And I just don't have the willpower. But here's the deal. Nothing else matters until you start believing that you are worth the daily investment in your health. Nothing else is more important. And when you believe that you are worth the daily time investment, doing the hard work, then you will be able to do everything you want to do for everyone else. Because I think we're so prone as women to take care of everyone else first. But unless we take care of ourselves, we won't be able to help anybody else. So that's what I encourage your listeners to do.
Thank you for that. And I hope you'll come back. You're just a wealth of information and motivation.
Thanks,
so
Barbara.
thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode of Age Better Podcast, please do a few things. First, share it with all your friends and family. Then, subscribe to Age Better wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, so you never miss a single episode. Finally, if you have ideas for topics you want me to cover in a future episode of Age Better, send an email to agebetterpodcast@gmail.com or reach out to me on social media. Until next time, remember this: we can't control getting older, but we can control how we do it. Talk to you soon. Age Better Podcast is a proud member of the Sound Advice Network. Sound Advice, women's voices amplified.